We don't really come to this world with an owner's manual, and we don't know how to work with this stress, and we learn to avoid it, to shut down, to fix it, to figure it out, to constantly be, trying to fix ourselves, and that's where the biohacking fit in for me. So burnout is if we don't listen to our body and learn how to slow down and rest, our body will do that for us. When we start paying attention and listening and responding to our body, giving it the rest, giving it the needs, setting the boundaries, saying no, and maybe even, believe it or not, stop multitasking, well, then we become our own medicine and we can heal. The nervous system dysregulation is what causes illness, chronic disease, chronic symptoms, and it's this way of relating to our body and healing trauma is so innate. It is such a human thing, but everything in society tells us to go faster, burn at both ends, avoid our body, don't you dare slow down because your life depends on it, and it all creates this stuff.
Welcome back to the Hustle and Grind podcast, the show where we dig into why real entrepreneurs trade comfort for conviction. This isn't about vanity metrics or overnight success. It's about the stories behind building a reputation that actually matters. I'm your host, Andrew, keynote architect, platform builder, and fellow founder in the trenches. Today, I'm sitting down with Mitch Webb, the nervous system expert and health coach who helps clients heal from the inside out. Mitch specializes in working one-on-one with people who are struggling with gut issues, anxiety, autoimmune symptoms, persistent fatigue, burnout, and other chronic conditions that just haven't been resolved through conventional approaches. His mission, and what we're going to dive into today, is understanding how to achieve sustainable healing. Mitch doesn't offer quick fixes. He blends functional health principles with deep nervous system work to get to the root cause of these issues. His approach is trauma-informed, completely body-based, and tailored to the individual. He truly helps his clients get back to feeling like themselves again. We're going to talk about the powerful connection between the body and the brain, and why getting your nervous system right is the ultimate foundation for both health and high performance. So Mitch, thank you so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate it. I am really looking forward to talking to you today because you're an expert on the nervous system. And I think this is the one resource that as entrepreneurs we often forget about, or it's, that we don't need to deal with that. When in fact it's a bigger issue. I have some personal kind of stake in this as well. I'd like to hear what you have to say. So thank you so much for being on today. Really appreciate having you here.
Yeah, man. Thanks for the invite. Thanks for having me, and excited to jump into it, dude.
Cool, man. So first thing, I know we hear the bio when we first start off, got to hear what you do, but I'd like to hear a little bit about from your lips. Like, what do you do? What is that one thing that you're really, really good at?
Oh, man. I think of myself as kind of like a Swiss Army knife. And like total human optimization. I don't really love the optimization word anymore. That kind of comes from my biohacking background, and now hearing that out loud, it sounds like perfection. But really helping people heal. The people that I work with are typically dealing with chronic symptoms. That's what I went through. And, before really focusing and working with the nervous system, I was a health coach. And I learned about nutrition and exercise and detox and circadian rhythm and, clean water and sleep and the different things that require for us to perform at our best. I was really sick. I had a lot of chronic disease and symptoms, and I went on a journey to find what was going to help me. And these things certainly helped. It's the foundation, to do the nervous system work. We need the energy and the rest and the capacity. That's kind of like, how much can our nervous system deadlift, right? Are we able to handle emotions and different deadlines and work with different types of people, or do we shut down when things get too fast and too overwhelming? And so over the years, I just was keep collecting and finding different things that help people, and always wanted to turn around and share that with the people I'm working with. And when I found the nervous system, I really found what I was meant to do. And what happens is the nervous system just gets dysregulated from survival stress. So we don't really come to this world with an owner's manual, and we don't know how to work with this stress. And we learn to avoid it, to shut down, to fix it, to figure it out, to constantly be, trying to fix ourselves. And that's where the biohacking fit in for me. But it wasn't healthy because it was me ignoring myself, overriding what I felt, and forcing my body to feel through control. And so if we zoom out and we say, hey, what do you do now? It's helping people connect with their body to become their own medicine when they can slow down and listen and respond. Because if we can't listen to our body, we're left reliant on the external of how to move and shape and do different things with our body. And that can end us with, with disease and with chronic disease and chronic symptoms like anxiety, gut issues, insomnia, autoimmune, things like that. And when we start paying attention and listening and responding to our body, giving it the rest, giving it the needs, setting the boundaries, saying no, and maybe even, believe it or not, stop multitasking, well, then we become our own medicine and we can heal.
I think that's one thing as entrepreneurs is we are chief everything officers. And I think it's hard for us to get into that mode where we're not just trying to hustle to keep this thing alive, especially in the first few years. It's the hardest time because we're doing everything. And I think, I've done this. I've completely ignored my central nervous system, and it's checked me a couple times and said, no, you're going to stop. But we think burnout, we think all of these buzzwords, and we don't realize it's actually an underlying issue with our central nervous system and how we do stuff. You were talking about multitasking. We aren't good at it as humans. And I think that's one thing we think we are, but every time you shift takes up mental energy, right? Yeah. Talk a little bit more about that. And what's the difference? Where does your nervous system come in with burnout? What can people see in that so they can take something away with it?
Well, first I want to kind of just normalize what you're talking about. Being a chief everything officer, burning the candle at both ends, multitasking, wearing all the hats. When I hear that, I think of survival, right? And that's probably where we're coming from. This is a pattern that kept us alive. It got us out of certain circumstances. It put food on the table and a roof over our head. And it gave us love and attention, and people like us and come to us for these superpowers that we have. But ultimately, if we're abandoning and not listening to our body in the process, we end up in these chronic symptoms. Now, you talk about burnout. And what's that look like, right? Is that the question? You want to know kind of what it looks like or what a symptom of burnout would be?
Let's go into it and how the central nervous system comes into that. Yeah.
So burnout is if we don't listen to our body and learn how to slow down and rest, our body will do that for us, right? So what happens is this trying to fix things, trying to figure things out, trying to do it all at once, trying to hustle, trying to do anything but rest or sleep. This revs the nervous system up, and it tells the nervous system there's a tiger at our door. And if there's a tiger at your door and it's ready to eat you, your nervous system's going to go into high alert. And if we're not paying attention to our body, this tiger is getting closer and closer, and it's scarier and scarier. And we put our head down and we work hard and we multitask and we do all the things, everything we can to avoid that tiger. But that tiger still, to the nervous system, it's there and it wants to eat us. Right? So when our nervous system stays in a high level of fight flight for a long period of time, eventually the nervous system goes, hey, this guy's going to redline and he's going to die if I continue to burn at this high of rate, right? We're flooded with adrenaline, with cortisol, with norepinephrine, these excitatory hormones that keep us going when there's a threat. And I mean, think about our ancestors. If they didn't get a kill, they didn't kill an animal, they didn't bring food home, they kept hunting. They were able to go into that high gear to perform, and that's what we're doing. We're going into this high gear, we're performing, we're fixing, we're figuring out, we're being the man, whatever that is, whatever our business needs. But over time, that wears us down, and the nervous system goes, hey, this guy's going to redline, I'm going to pull the e-brake, right? And so this is the high-tone dorsal branch of our parasympathetic nervous system. People also often think parasympathetic is rest and digest, but there's this other gear that's kind of like shut down. It's like pulling an e-brake and almost like I'm going to play possum. The threat has gotten so serious, it's going to eat me, and so I'm going to pretend that I'm dead so that I have a chance of surviving. And when that happens, that's called freeze, right? And so the nervous system pulls the e-brake, all that sympathetic charge that was driving us to be who we were, to get all the tasks done, it's still underneath that. So it's kind of like having the gas and the brakes on at the same time. And so what we typically do in this situation is we use our survival response. We push through. We try to keep going. We avoid it. We say, I'll rest later. Well, this isn't the type of rest that you can sleep off. This is, I'm going to keep slowing you down until you break down. And that's where things like autoimmune and disease, anxiety, fatigue, all these things come from. And so eventually we have to pay attention to that if we don't want to be in a collapsed, fatigued state for the rest of our life. And so many people go through this state, and what do? They take more caffeine, they take Adderall, they take supplements, whatever that is to override. But eventually that runs out, and we end up, our body breaks. And that's what being in burnout kind of feels like.
So let's talk about rest for a little bit too, because I think it's something that's important, but not a lot of us do that correctly. And for me, it's like I take 1 day a week. That's my non-negotiable. That just helps me to kind of have one day where I can just kind of breathe for a second and kind of get into my business and, do some of the higher level planning. But I've also noticed a lot of times where I think I'm resting, but it's not resting. Like I'm not actually, it's more just I've burned to that point that's so bad that I'm not resting. It's just my brain is just shut down at that point. Talk a little bit more about like what is actual rest? What does it look like? And what are some of the best ways to do it to keep yourself from burning your certain nervous system out?
Yeah, totally. Great question. So many people, myself included, I've been learning to rest for a couple of years now. That felt like quite a threat in the beginning, because what I learned early on, that if I perform, if I keep going, if I'm constantly being productive, then people love me. I get connection from other people. I get what I want. And over time, that ignoring the body will break us down. And so, I lost my train of thought there. So we're talking about
doing rest right to be able to actually rest.
How do we do that right? So what'll happen is somebody will typically say, I'm going to rest. And then we sit on the couch and we're scrolling, or we're telling ourselves that we're, a piece of shit, or we're worthless because we're not being productive. And so that's telling my nervous system there's a threat. So how am I going to, again, here comes the tiger. How am I going to rest if a tiger is sitting there telling me it's going to eat me for resting? So it's our internal voice. And, where does that come from? It comes from childhood, from teachers, from parents, from coaches and things that we've worked with. And so when we're learning to do this, we can take a survival pattern of everything. It's called like all or nothing, right? Am I just going to stop? Am I going to take a day off and then I'm going to lay there and beat myself up? We really want to start with like 1%. How can I rest for 1%? Meaning, can I lay down and set a timer for 5 or 10 minutes? Can I pause between transitions in my day? Like, say I've been working at home and I'm going to go to a lunch meeting. Well, can I pause when I sit in the car and feel my body in my chair, right? Feel my butt in my chair, feel my back up against the seat. Man, maybe even sinking into that seat and let that seat hold me, let gravity pull me down. Because unconsciously, we're always holding all of this tension in the body, and we're so unaware of it because we're just focused on the next thing. And so in the nervous system, it's just called orienting. Now, we can do exploratory orienting, which is like being interested and using our senses to check out the room that we're in. So can I see some colors? Can I feel my butt in the chair? Can I smell what's around me and listen to the sound? We use these senses to pull us into the environment, because typically we are running from the tiger. We're trying to prevent the tiger from happening again. And we're doing anything except being present in this moment. And if we just pause between transitions, orient with our senses to bring ourselves into the environment, I know right now that if I just pull my gaze away from the screen and I look outside, and especially if I really look far into the distance, then my system relaxes a little bit. How do I know? I feel my shoulders drop. I feel a deep breath come in. And these are ways that we can relax just a little bit throughout the day, just with pauses, with listening to the body and seeing what comes up. Maybe that's difficult. Maybe that feels really good. It's all information. And this is why also in this work, we do a little bit at a time. This is called titration. Now, if you're like me and you're coming from the biohacking world and you're used to this big cathartic, I call it Amazon Prime of healing. It's this next day delivery. If we got to have it right now, that's just not how it works. That can be really overwhelming to the system to slow down and feel what's going on in the body. That's why we've been living in our head, because what's below the shoulders is feels too intense. So do we want to tap into that all at once? Nah. We want to do a little bit, orient, feel our butt in the chair, relax, look at some colors that we like. Oh, there's orange. I love orange. How does that make me feel? Like, you know what? I think I just took a deep breath. I think I just relaxed a little bit. That's a great piece of work and a great first step.
And I think a lot of people think that when you say nervous system, you think, or burnout, they think, it's your brain that's gone. From what I found personally, and answer this question, however you want, but for me, it's not just about my brain. It's also about my body catching up. There's some things that happen. Like I had some gut issues earlier in the week, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's stress related. That's not in my head. My body's reacting to it. It's not just one thing, right? Yeah. Talk a little bit more about that.
I'd say that's information. Our body speaks in symptoms. It doesn't mean that anything's wrong. It may be more indicating that we have not been paying attention. And now it's kind of taking these little pebbles and it's going, hey. Now the brain's job is to make meaning of symptoms. And it's going to come in and it's going to say, depending on what your conditioning is like, maybe it wants to tell you that you did something wrong. What did you eat recently? Right? So that sounds logical because that's our brain trying to make meaning, but that's a story. Now in the somatic world, I'd say let the story go. Come back into that sensation, right? And what's it feel like? Not like, it feels like anxiety. Or it feels like pain. More like, what's the image that I get? Is it like this green yuckiness? That's what I'm imagining as we're talking about something feels gross in my stomach. So it's this green yuckiness and it's in my stomach. And it's like, I could easily disconnect from that with my brain and try to go take some Pepto-Bismol or whatever, but that keeps us stuck. Right. So what happens is our body wants completion. It wants to renegotiate how we responded to that stress. So maybe something happened a couple of days ago that it was too much for us and we avoided it or we pushed it away. And now it's coming back to let us know that it wants our attention. And it's coming in the form of a symptom. And so it's real easy to go into the story and try to figure it out. But really what I'm encouraging my clients to do is, can we sit with that? And we don't have to do it in the moment. It could be later on in the day. All we got to do is bring up the feeling and the emotion, the memory, and it may trigger that feeling again. Like, oh man, I'm getting sick right now feeling this, right? So I'm going to put my hand there, and we can kind of also think of symptoms as like little parts of ourself that have been let out in the cold, that have been told you don't belong and you're not allowed here. And if they keep knocking on the door and telling us, can I come in where it's warm? And you're saying, go away, boom, slamming that door. So what we want to do is we want to be the big brother, be the adult, bring them in, put them on our lap and say, tell me, man, what's going on? And it'll be like, what does this remind me of? What emotion is here? What comes up when I really sit with this queasy, yucky feeling in my stomach? And what you'll find is when we have capacity for it, it will move and shift. It'll tell us what it wants. And ultimately, what's the emotion that could be there? What did I need in that moment that I'm reminded of when I have this symptom? And can I give myself that right now? And what happens when we do that is it's renegotiated. It's complete. It got to respond instead of shut down. And so much of this is just connection and love, belonging, and acceptance. And when we can meet these symptoms with acceptance and with allowing, then they really start to shift because we're so used to pushing them away, telling them they're going away and trying to fix them. And ultimately we're saying you're not allowed. But this is the reparenting process to bring this part in. So you belong here. I got you. You're safe. I'm going to take care of you. And we express whatever that symptom needs. And again, it's just connection and love and belonging.
Now, how did you find out about all of this? How did you get into it? I'm just kind of curious about the backstory behind it. But so you said you had a lot of disease and a lot of issues that you were solving with this. But like, what was that story?
Oh man, so I would say the school of hard knocks. I've had my butt kicked enough that I have tried everything, and I found that these things, like the nutrition, the physical stuff, it definitely helped. But nothing hit it like working with the nervous system, because there was just misattunement when I was a kid. Kids need unconditional love. They need to belong, to be authentic, and to feel safe. There wasn't a lot of that when I was a kid, right? And so when I got into therapy, I thought it was everything else. Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to run through my little laundry list just to kind of get a little jaw drop moment for you and tell you what's possible. But I'm the poster child of this. I had all this unresolved trauma and survival responses living in my body. I was very disconnected, and I was trying to force and override and avoid it to heal. And to heal, we want to move towards this. But for me, when I was 20 years old, I fell out of a second-story window. I had a traumatic brain injury. After that, I started having panic attacks and insomnia. About 6 months after the accident, I broke out in plaque psoriasis over my entire body, which is very common when we have trauma. We have these big skin flares where the skin becomes a detox organ because so much is coming out that our liver and our kidneys can't process it. And so that was alarming. And of course, they gave me benzodiazepines like Xanax, and they gave me an immune suppressant. So they're saying, you don't belong, go away. And that worked for a while. And then I moved into a house that had black mold in it, and I developed Lyme disease, which is a tick-borne illness. Yeah. I'd get lost going to work in the morning in my hometown. I wouldn't remember my name after lunch. Everything in my body hurt. It felt like I was on fire, to where I had so much anxiety. I couldn't sleep at night, and I was fatigued, and I even started to hallucinate because I hadn't slept for so long. Now, I'm not done yet. I'm just getting started. So I go to the doctor, find out that I have metabolic issues that are similar to diabetes, and I had heavy metals, and they found the mold, and they found the Lyme. So I moved out of the house that we were renting, detoxed the mold, the heavy metals. I reversed the diabetes with eating. This is where I fell in love with nutrition and wanted to share this with other people. I became evangelical about low carb and ketogenic diets and fasting and detox and all the things. But ultimately what I was doing there is I was controlling my symptoms and controlling how I felt with all this external stuff, right? So fast forward, I leave the corporate world. I start doing my own health coaching business. I go to see one of my first clients, and I get T-boned by a dump truck. It completely totals my car. I get post-concussion syndrome for about a year. I was knocked out cold. At this time, I could walk. I was in the best shape of my life. I could walk for about 10 or 15 minutes, and I had to get my butt back home, or else I'd be wiped out for a week or two. Couldn't sleep. Gut went off. I lost lots of weight, and it took about a year to get better from that. And then COVID happened, and I got what you would call long-haul COVID. Now, long-haul COVID can also be called chronic disease, multiple chemical sensitivities. I do not believe in those things. I think they're just labels. It basically was telling me your nervous system is maxed out, and you're in this collapsed state. So I had, like we were talking earlier, the e-brake is put, had high level of activation for a long time. The brake comes on, shuts me down, because it's like, hey, if this guy keeps going, he's going to die. And so I got that 3 years in a row. And so I went down to about 140 pounds. I'm right at 200 right now. I couldn't eat. I got to where I could only have meat and salt. And then I found The Body Keeps the Score, a book about trauma being stored in the body and how the body remembers that. And it feels like it's still here, even though the stressor is gone. And I was in a men's group where I was sharing some of these things. And one of the guys pulled me aside and he said, hey, man, you reading that book? He's like, with the trauma? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, that's you. That's what you're dealing with. And so that started my journey of learning about trauma and working with my mentor, Irene Lyon, doing her courses, Smart Body, Smart Mind, and the 21-day nervous system tune-up, alongside working one-on-one with a therapist. And I would say in this work, some things happen fast, some things happen slow. And for me, the thing that I could tell was changing right away was my food sensitivities went away, and I was able to exercise again. And over these next couple of years, I started digging my way out of the hole. I fell in love with this work, and I learned that this is what causes illness. The nervous system dysregulation is what causes illness, chronic disease, chronic symptoms. And it's this way of relating to our body and healing trauma is so innate. It is such a human thing, but everything in society tells us to go faster, burn at both ends, avoid our body, don't you dare slow down because your life depends on it, and it all creates this stuff. And so it's been a hell of a journey, and for anybody that's dealing with chronic symptoms like me, there's an answer, and it's not in the nutrition and the exercise and all that stuff's great. It's foundational. We have to have those things on board to do this work. But when we work at the nervous system level, these symptoms will heal.
And that's an amazing story. And I think it's something that shows that, what we think is going on may not actually be what's going on. There was a lot of trauma and a lot of medical issues, but also there's another side to this as well that we don't like to think about. We like to think about we don't like to think about kind of trauma from our past as being something that is currently affecting our present, or we have some concept of it that may not necessarily correlate with what is actually happening, if that put that correctly. But the stuff from your past is not going to go away until you deal with it.
Well, it's because it's unconscious. And our body's protecting us from that. That stuff is too much, too fast. It's everything, everywhere, all at once. It's overwhelming. And thank God our body is keeping us from that, because it would overwhelm us. But that's why we do a little bit at a time. That's why we go into this deeper work, and we start to look in the dark room with the flashlight, shine a light in there so that we can start to heal. And again, little bits at a time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mitch, thank you so much for being on the show today. I think it's really important that people hear these things and a different viewpoint on things like, chronic illness and burnout, especially as entrepreneurs. A lot of us probably resonated with what you're saying, or your backstory that, all of these things happen. We're in this constant fight or flight state. We're in this constant, battling state to keep a business going, especially in those first few years. It's really difficult. And I think it's really good to hear these things. So thank you so much for being on the show today, sharing this wisdom. Really appreciate you.
Absolutely, brother. Thanks for the opportunity to share.
Thanks for tuning into the Hustle and Grind podcast, where we unpack what it really takes to build something that matters. If today's conversation hit home, do me a favor. Share it with someone who's in the trenches too. And if you're building your own brand, platform, or message and want help turning that story into serious authority, head over to theauthorityforge.com to see how we can help. Until next time, keep showing up, keep shipping, and keep chasing the work that sets you on fire. I'm Andrew, and this was the Hustle and Grind podcast.